Good evening to one and all. On behalf of Indus International Research Foundation, I welcome you to the 8th session of webinar series on important battles of Indian subcontinent. In this session, our invited speaker is Dr. Poonam Rajalakshmi Rana, Associate Professor from Tribhuvan University, Kathmandu, and our session chair is Dr. Naira Markachian, lecturer at Yerevan, Armenia. The topic of today's session is Nepal Bhot Wars. So Dr. Poonam Rana will be speaking on the Nepal Bhot Wars, and both our resource persons have been associated with the Indus International Research Foundation in various conferences, and physically too, both have come to Udaipur at Mohanlal Sukhadia universities in various international conferences. We are glad to have you both and privileged to have you both in this webinar. This webinar series intends to revisit the important battles of Indian subcontinent and also to explore those unknown battles which had impact on the Indian society, polity, culture, and various other dimensions. So in this webinar series, we are organizing a webinar on important battles on every second and fourth Saturday of every month. We have started since January 2025 and continuing this series. This is the 8th session, and now I request the General Secretary of Indus International Research Foundation, Group Captain Raj Shekhar Mehta, sir, Storage Chakra recipient, to introduce about IIRF.
Good evening, Dr. Badria. Welcome and good evening to all present, especially Dr. Poonam Rana and Ms. Naira. Both are very familiar faces for us and always participating in our events. Thank you very much. And also all the participants present here. IIRF has, with the help of Dr. Badria, we have started this webinar series on important battles of India. And we are very fortunate and very privileged that Dr. Poonam Rana from Nepal is participating in this webinar today. Before we start the session, I will like to give a brief introduction to IIRF, because many who are present today might not be knowing about our organization. Especially we have many people joining from Nepal. For the benefit of them, I would like to say that Indus International Research Foundation is a New Delhi-based organization with its overseas center at USA and Bangalore. It is part of a global network of scholars, professionals, and veterans based in India and abroad. The foundation, ladies and gentlemen, focuses primarily on international relations, Indian heritage, political economy, and security studies. We have a special interest in the Indian subcontinent, and we always want to host event that belongs to the subcontinent rather than India itself. IIRF is led by experts of decades of international and domestic policy experience and engages with government, policymakers, academics, students, industries, practitioners, and civil society to provide, I would say, insightful and fresh analysis of global trends and India's changing role as an emerging world leader. Foundation has also run special programs for veterans. Now, IIRF in its panel has an array of very high-profile personalities from civil and defense services, academics as veterans, advisors, who give direction to the research effort of our organization. Research and publication being its main activity, IIRF maintains a very high, I would say, editorial standards for material published at its site. We sponsor research projects, organize interviews, panel discussion, debates, seminars, publication of books, journals, and we generate reports which constitute our core activity. Now, uniqueness of IIRF, ladies and gentlemen, lies in the fact that we try to seek solutions to national and international problems through the prism of Indian ethos, philosophy, and civilizational wisdom. We have a lot of cultural orientation to whatever we do, Because we believe if mankind is to survive as a civil society, there is no alternative other than to share the resources of the universe for the benefit of all. Like many countries have America first, England first, and we have Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. We feel that entire globe, entire world is a family, and we all need to share with that spirit. In an age where nations are turning inwards, putting their interest above others, we feel that Indian civilization, philosophy, traditions have much to offer to the world. Therefore, we are a global think tank of professionals, and we come up with new innovative ideas using the traditional Indian wisdom to analyze global trends and areas of international affairs, economic, state, science and technology, etc. Foundation also endeavors to prepare India for facing the challenges of the 21st century as an economic and knowledge power to contribute its bit in the common good of humanity. We believe in the Indian wisdom contained in the Vedas that says nature is sole owner of all treasures in the universe and there is enough for all, everyone. Ishopanishad. With this quote, I will hand over to Dr. Piyush Vadvia to take this session further. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, and all the best to you.
Captain R.S. Mehta, sir. Now I request President of IIRF, Brigadier C. Sandeep Kumar, sir, for his address.
Thank you. I'm audible?
Yes.
Firstly, I want to thank Dr. Poonam Rana, who has agreed to speak on this Nepal-Tibet war, which took place, as she says, thrice from the 1788 until the final thing took place in 1855. So it's a war in which Tibet and Nepal got engaged in a war in which, whereas this is an invasion by Nepalese troops across to Tibet and settled out, but they ensured that they have an upper hand against the Tibetans, through which they were forced to give a remittance of some amount to ensure that they are not troubled again. And I would not like to speak anymore on that. This is an operation which we would like to learn about, and I'm sure people who are there in this webinar will also learn, since this was not much talked about it was not taught, or the history was not known. So with this, I would like to hand over to Dr. Poonam Rana to continue with the presentation on the Nepal Bhot war.
Thank you, sir. Before I invite Poonam Rana, madam, I will take the opportunity to introduce both our resource person, invited speaker, as well as our session chair. About Dr. Poonam Rana, madam. Dr. Poonam Rajalakshmi Rana is associate professor with more than 24 years of teaching experience and research work. She is also Deputy General Secretary of the Nepal Heritage Society. She holds doctoral degree in Nepalese history, culture, archaeology, and her research topic was an analytical study of costumes, ornaments in Nepalese art from 3rd century BC to 12th century AD. And she has been associated with various organizations in Nepal related to environment, history, culture, and she had various research papers presented in national and international conferences, and they have been published in the journals with impact factors. And she was invited in foreign universities like China, Singapore, Nepal, India, and to her credit, there are many books, which includes the books on the heritage culture, especially on the Nepalese costumes, Nepalese ornaments, and the history of Nepal. Now, with our session chair, Dr. Naira Mukherjee. She is a historian, orientalist, diplomat, dream analyst, psychologist, TV anchor, and writer from the Republic of Armenia. She graduated from Yerevan Polytechnic Institute, Armenia, Moscow Diplomatic Academy, Russia, Jawaharlal Nehru University, India. She has done psychology courses as well. She has commenced her career at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Armenia and was on a diplomatic service in the Armenian embassies in Moscow and Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. Later, she joined the Ministry of Defense of RA as an editor-translator at Information and PR Department. After that, she was invited to the Armenian President's PR and Information Center as a senior expert on Oriental countries. She is frequently invited by various TV channels for shows related to history, culture, and dream interpretation. She is constantly invited as a keynote speaker and subject expert to national and international conferences. She has been felicitated with awards and honors such as Bhumi Putra Biju Patnaik International Women Empowerment Award 2023 in India, and Dr. Sarojini Naidu International Women's Award for Working Women in 2024 in India. She has written 4 books and has been co-author of 6 books. Welcome you, madam. Now I hand over the session to the session chair, Dr. Naira Markachin, for further. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you very much, Piyushji. So, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, it is my pleasure to welcome you to the 8th session on important battles of Indian subcontinent. This is a series and very important series of lectures where we explore significant military encounters that have shaped regional histories and have left a lasting mark on the historical and political landscape of their time. Our today's speaker, Dr. Rana, is a respected scholar known for her insightful research on Himalayan history, culture, costumes, ornaments, and I know her. We participated in a few conferences, we were together. So today she will speak on the Nepal Bhot Tibet Wars, a series of armed conflicts between the Gorkha Kingdom of Nepal and Tibet in the late 18th and early 19th centuries. These wars were driven by complex motives, including territorial ambition, trade disputes, and shifting alliances, and they eventually drew in the Sin Empire of China. Their outcomes redefined borders, trade routes, and diplomatic relations in the Himalayan region for decades to come. And so now I welcome Dr. Rana to share her insights into this compelling chapter of South Asian history. So please, madam.
Thank you, Naira, and thank you, Indus Research Center, as well as Mohanlal Sukadea University for giving me this opportunity. So let me, this time I have no complaint against Pius because I would always complain. He won't give me more than 10 minutes to speak, but now he has given me a lot of time. So thank you, Pius. So yeah, let me begin. My topic today is Nepal Bhot War. Actually, I was about to talk about 18th century last war, but since Mehta sir was so very interested in Nepal-Tibet-China war, so then I did further research and got all my materials. So let me begin. Like war, as you see, war is not a good thing. Everyone knows that, but it is unavoidable. And I have defined it in a different way. W is for worse, A is for action, and R is for regenerated. That means now and then, again and again, due to issues that pile up from one issue, second problem, third problem, and then ultimately the wood is placed, and a small incident, a small flick of something, a flame, will create a big war. So that is every generation, we all criticize war, but every generation is nowadays, since 17th century, since earlier than that, when people were living in primitive hunting-gathering society, where there was the first war for fire. So all this has led to war cannot be avoided, but none of us want to have a big war. That is the situation. So now let me go into my context. In Nepal, we have 3 wars. Nepal Bhot War. In fact, the name of Tibet came only in the 6th century, when there was a king called Songchom Gompo in Tibet. Otherwise, the name of Tibet was originated, or it started during his regime. And Tibetan language earlier was Bhot Bhasa, and it was termed as Bhot. the old name of Lhasa or Tibet is Bhot. So Bhot was, as you see, even today when I went for my research and presentation in Tibetan University, even now when they give visa or when they put the stamp, it is Bhot. You will have to look into it and you will see it's Bhot. It is not Tibet. Tibet is outcome was in the 6th century when Shrongcham Gampo was the ruler. And during his time, our princess, Lichipi Princess Prikuti, was married to him. And just as King Ashoka is brand ambassador of spreading Buddhism, Princess Prikuti of Nepal was brand ambassador from Nepal at that time in spreading Buddhism in Tibet. Earlier, that area was Bonpo religion. Bon was the indigenous religion of Tibet. So the Bonpo was the religion and Bon were the followers. Bonpo people were the followers. So you see, the Tibet, the name of Bhot is actually, that's why I wrote Bhot, because that's the earliest name of Tibet. So the 3 wars took place. In Nepal, there were 3 wars. One took place in 1788 and 1789, and Treaty of Kerong took place. Now, where does Kerong lie? Kerong lies around in the northern Himalayan region side of northern Nepal, and it is also known as Raswa Godi. Even today, we call it Raswa Godi Kerong, like that. Even today, it is known that it is a border. And then we have the second war that took place in 1791 till 1792, and Treaty of Betrawati was signed. And even Betrawati, where is it? It is in the northern side of Nepal, and it is at Nuwakot district. And it's not very far away from Kathmandu. Say it's around 80 kilometers away from Kathmandu. And the nearest border, Nepal-China border, is Kerong. And there is Betrawati. If you search in the net, you will see there is a river, Trisuli River running, and there is a bridge known as Betrawati Bridge. So the second treaty was signed at that area. Then the third war took place in 1855, and during that war, Janga Bahadur, who was the prime minister then, who had taken the title of Shri Tin Maharaj, he himself went to fight. And all these materials have been collected from a resource, majority from Britanta or diary of Janga Bahadur, and of course other books also. So the problem of study is, a lot of studies have been done on Nepal-Tibet war, a lot of studies have been done related to Tibet, related to Nepal, related to the discussions taking place, so many things. But my research focus is on the diary of Janga Bahadur. And diary, the difference between book and a diary is different, because diary, every day what took place, the experiences, the feelings, the emotions are shared. So I thought it would be better if I get it from the diary. So the materials I got were from, in Nepal we call it Britanta, on diary. So I got the materials from the diary, and the problem is that has not been focused. So that gap has been fulfilled by this research. Then I think he went to third slide. I want the second slide. So then methodology is mostly secondary sources, because naturally I cannot get primary source. How can I go and interview Janga Bahadur? And So methodology is qualitative, yeah, and the objective is to find out what happened, what were the tactics used by why the war took place. One, second, what were the tactics observed during those days during the war. And you won't believe me if I tell you that they were also using tantra mantra. I don't know if you believe it or not. That is tantra mantra. I don't know. It's not magic. It's mantra to put down the enemy. And believe it or not, the diary mentions that. So it's very interesting. So next slide, please. Okay. Now, now I come to the first war that took place in 1788 and ended in 1789 with the Treaty of Kerom. And why did that war take place? Actually, with a war does not take place because of one event. One event ignites the war, but the real war, to have a real war, many issues and many problems are gathered. So in this case also, in Nepal, there was trade dispute or trade issues between Bhot, that is Tibet, and between Nepal. And at that time, Nepal was minting silver coins for the Tibetans or the Bhot people. And the Bhot people were not happy with the quality of the coin. And the Tibetans and Nepal was not happy with the trade, the salt trade. At that time, salt was traded from Tibet, brought to Nepal, and they said, you give us bad quality of salt. So the minor issues at that time, because of such issues also, were the causes of war. Then Nepal gave, and then at that time, in Tibet, there was a very important person called Shamarpa Lama. He and his 14 disciples were against the government that was in Bhot or Lhasa. So they came to Nepal and they came here to seek asylum. So when they came for asylum, Nepal government allowed them to come. So that also caused another event, another matter that led into the first war, Tibet-Nepal war. Another slide, please. Oh, I think what Mohit did was earlier slide, please. Yeah, this one. Yeah, same. So yeah, at that time, who was the ruler? The ruler was King Rana Bahadur Shah, but he was a minor. So the real regent who was ruling in his name was Bahadur Shah. So at that time, Bahadur Shah, when the first war took place, Bahadur Shah was the regent and the infant king was Rana Bahadur Shah. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, the conflict. Now, when first they had disputes, they wanted to solve it through table talks, but that did not settle. So ultimately what happened was the Nepali troops started to march and they captured Choyong and Kuti. Kuti, as I told you, lies in Kuti is another very important place in the history of Nepal. It lies in the border, and it is and later on I will show you, it lies in Nilam County, present day Nilam County, and historically it was trans-Himalayan trade route of Nepal. At that time, what happened was the Sarta Baha, we call them Sarta Baha, who are the traders. And this, even in the 5th century, like five, there is an inscription in Saku, there is an inscription of 538, I think, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, in the 5th century, that mentions about very important trade route via Kuti. So this area was very important, short route from Nepal to Tibet or Bhot, trade route. But the people at that time, the Sartabaha they used to term it the gate of hell. Why was it called the gate of hell? Because the route was very, very treacherous, very dangerous. So that's why they call it gate of hell. And to go to Tibet from Nepal, they used to go from Sakhu. There's a place called Sakhu, which is not very far away from Kathmandu, and it passes through Bauddha, Sakhu. Then they pass through many other places like Hilsa, Kimanthaka, Olangchun, Gola, and many other small villages until they come to Kuti. So Kuti was a very important place at that time. And the war was, Chotyang and Kuti was captured. So I'm just giving you a picture that how these places were so important. And so Nepal army, or at that time, the commander was Kazi Krishna Shah. So the commander known as Krishna Shah, he was responsible to look after the Kuti side, because all the army, they were divided into groups, and then troops were sent, some to look after Kuti under Commander Krishna Shah, and under the commander Kritiman Singh Bosnet, Kerong area was under his command. So like that, the troops were divided to fight the war. Okay, next slide, please. Okay, 1788 war. Now another one is, after they captured Chotyang and Kuti in 1788, Nepalese army under Regent Bahadur Shah invaded Tibet. At that time, they were Nepalese army. They actually invaded Tibet and plundered Tasi Lumpo Monastery. The picture which is shown there of Tasi Lumpo Monastery is of today. I have no idea how it looked like in the 1788, but now it looks like this. So they looted that. When they reached there, they plundered and looted, because Tibet, was very, very rich in gold. In fact, when I went there when I was there in 2018, at that time also, I was shocked, like from here till a large area is all shops of gold. I did not see anyone entering it, but I did enter. And even in the monastery, there is one room for Dalai Lama. Each and every monastery in Tibet has a room for Dalai Lama. And the room is all not painted with gold, but the gold is, made into tin. Small sheets, and then they are pasted everywhere. So it is real gold everywhere. Even the throne is gold, and the small room is always there for Dalai Lama. And I actually went and I was touching it, and then I said, "Is this polished?" They said, "No, it is real." So I was shocked. So at that time, Tibet, even today and even now, it is supposed to be very rich in gold. So all these monasteries were plundered by Nepalese. When they captured it, they plundered it. Then the Kuti, which lies in Nilam town on Friendship Highway between Nepal and Tibet border, even now it is there. Kerong is in Gairong country, or Gairong County, as they call it. So we will look into that later. Next slide, please. So here, when I went to Sichuan, I did a poverty study between Sigatse and the bordering Nepal town. So you see this Nepal town is there. Nepal, just as we are like a sandwich in between, like we are for non-veg, we are chicken between India and and Tibet, and for veg, we are like tomatoes between India and China, like two big country, and we are in the center. So you see, Tibet at that time was free, but even today, what people say is, even when there was a small issue related to Nepali traders, even if there was small issue related to some fight, some problems, Tibet would always run to China. And we Nepali, even today, majority of them keep saying that if Tibet had not, like for each and everything, they used to run to China. And that is the result was later on, they came under China because there was no other options for them. And one day, every minor thing they used to go and report and then ask help of China. So Nepalese, all the historians, all the Nepalese, if you talk about it in a free and frank way, they will say like, we could see it coming since long time, since maybe 7th century, 8th century, everywhere. Since our trade relation was there since 6th century and even beyond that. So here you can see county countries like Jongba country, and all these are the bordering of the Sigatse Tibet region, and how we are adjoining them. And many places are there. Raswa, we call it Tatopani now, the border area. And then next slide, please. You will see the pictures. Mohit, where are you? There. Okay. Then you see all these are counties, Nilam County, the Nepal-Tibet border areas, how the bridges are there, and the roadways are there. So even today, it's even in those days, it was not so developed, but now there are roadways and many things, bridges and everywhere. Okay, next slide. Now, after that, after the war, what happened was that in 1789, the Treaty of Kerong was, they started that when Nepal, Tibet, okay, because the writing is so small here. So what happened was, after the dispute, after they began plundering of the monastery and all, and then Nepal started moving forward, now ultimately, at that time, even in China, Tibet did ask help of China, but China was even involved at that time with their own problems. So they did not send help during this time. They said, you solve your own problems. But later on, when the treaty was signed, they did interfere, I think. So here what we see is in the Kerung was when Nepal marched to the capital of Dakcha from Kuti and Kerong side, Tibet complained to China. See, I told you, for anything they used to complain to China. Small trade dispute, they used to run to China. Small problem regarding the traders, regarding fight, anything, they would go to China. And the person involved during that war from Tibet side were Goring, Sakya Lama, Teshu Lama, all these people were there during the war. And from Nepal side, there was Bomsha, Harihar Upadhyaya, Narsingh Sai. All these were commanders who were into the battlefield. And what did the treaty stress on? So what was the treaty about then? Finally, they agreed and a treaty was the treaty was about Nepal must withdraw from Tibet, again with the help of China. They went and they took help of China, and then the treaty with China Emperor and Tibet personals, they got together and then they brought out this. They said Nepal must withdraw from Tibet territory occupied by Nepal during the war. Nepal demanded like they have to return entire expense made in the war. Nepal wanted, like, we have spent so much money and you must give us what we have spent, was what Nepal wanted. And 50 dharni, dharni means 1.200 grams gold, as a compensation for breaching the treaty made during the period of King Pratap Singh Shah. Now, earlier there used to be, during Pratap Singh Shah, there was a treaty signed. And the treaty was like they would be in harmony with each other. But since both Tibet and Nepal, there was breaching of the treaty, so they said you have to pay us one, because Tibet was very rich in gold. So ultimately they wanted 1,200 grams of gold to be given. That was put forth. Next slide, please. Okay, Kerong Treaty took place in 2nd June 1789. That is nearly early 18th century. That now Tibet, at first, when they placed all these kinds of things in front of Tibet, they said, no, we can't give you so much of gold, neither can we compensate. So what they did was, then the conditions they kept was Nepal should pull back force occupied during the invasion, and Nepal should henceforth will not attack Tibet. They will not attack. That was their view. Tibet should pay a fixed amount of money every year, a small amount, and trade between Tibet and India, like between Tibet, India, is to be done only via route of Nepal. They fixed exchange rate between the mixed coins, like 2 mixed coins equals to 1 new coin. So they were like, they were trading, they were exchanging, Nepal was minting coins for them, and all that disputes were to be solved in this way. The picture you see was our earlier map of Greater Nepal. Okay, next slide. Where is it? Okay. Now, after the first war, so slowly everything was fine, and both state, Tibet, that is Bhot and Nepal, agreed, and the signing of the treaty took place. Now, after that, again, the second Bhot and Nepal-China war took place in 1791. Sino-Nepalese War. In the Tibet-Nepal War, also known as Second Tibet-Gorkha War. It was also termed as Gorkha War, due to Tibet's failure to pay the earlier treaty of Kerong, which was signed. They had to give certain amount of money every year, but the Tibetans failed to do that. They paid only one tribute, and then they did not. So in 1791, dispute arose, and Grand Lama reported to Chinese emperor that Nepal was giving them again trouble because they were unable to give the tribute. Nepalese Gorkha, the merchants now in Nepal, the traders earlier, if you believe it or not, since 6th century, Nepal was very close to Tibet. even the trade relation with Tibet was much greater than trade relation with India, because in India we come to know about 3rd century BC when Kautalya Arthasastra mentions of Radipaki, those woolen materials, woolen shawls sold at Pataliputra is the only historicity and trade relation that can be generated. But with Tibet, we have after Princess Brikuti married in the 6th century, there used to be, she took with her around nearly 300 workers and many more servants. So the Tibet, all Nepalese went there as a dowry, and they were settled there. At that time, Tibet was, people had no idea about making palaces. They were living in tents like Mongolians. And our Nepali artisans were the first people who made Potala Palace. The old Darbar was, because she was a princess who lived in a palace, but there living in a tent was very difficult for her. So the Nepalese artisans were the ones who made Potala Darbar. The 4 rooms, the oldest room, even now when you go there, if any of you have chance, you will see the old 4 rooms. How can you find out it's the old rooms? Because it is made of Rakta Chandan, or red sandalwood, was very much found in Nepal. So she took that as a dowry, and a lot of it were around the doors, windows, all carvings made by Nepali artisans, and Jorkhang temple, all that were made by Nepalese artisans. So even today, the historicity and relationship with Tibet at that time was very much closer to Tibet. But later on, as time passed on, they drifted, and all these kinds of issues emerged. Tibet's behavior against the merchants became very harsh. They started giving them trouble. Nepalese merchants started complaining, and the Chinese emperor, they started complaining, and the Chinese emperor declined the letter from the, now what happened was the merchants came here and complained to the government. And the government wrote a letter to Chinese emperor instead of Tibet, because everything was done by China for Tibet at that time itself in the 1791. So, and the emperor of China at that time said, oh, we will not entertain this letter of the robber king from Nepal. And this was very much disgraceful to Nepal government. Next slide, please. So they thought it was a big insult being called a robber king and not looking into the letter sent saying that the merchants were being very much harassed by the Tibetans. So the king, Gorkha king appointed Ranjit Kunwar. The photo you can see, Ranjit Kunwar was appointed, and who commanded 900 soldiers, and he marched through Kuti Pass to Dingura. And it is written that in the Jangabadur's diary that Tibet asked the Chinese emperor for help. Again, when the Nepali army marched, and Tibet again ran for help with asking help from Chinese emperor. Now, Chinese emperor sent 11,000 soldiers, out of which 3,000 Tibetan soldiers and 14,000 soldiers under the commandment of during Puntung, under Puntung. He was supposed to be the commander at that time. And this, I got the material from the diary. And Thorung, Terung, I don't know the difficult names. It is said there were total 70,000 Chinese soldiers at that time participating to fight against Nepal, Tibet. Tibet asked for help, so Tibetan soldiers plus Chinese soldiers fighting against Nepal. Now, Ranjit Kunwar knew his disadvantage. I think he went through, the next slide, please. in the second war. This is very, very interesting. Now, there were around 70,000 soldiers, believe it or not, and Nepal had not that much soldiers to, before that, slide before that, please. We went down. Yeah, this one. So Ranjit were 900 soldiers. So Chinese sent that, and it is said there were around total. In the diary, it has been written. Maybe it was exaggerated. I have no idea. But altogether, 70,000 soldiers were participating, and Ranjit Kumar knew his disadvantage. And then he retreated to Daibung battlefield. There is a place called Daibung. Next slide. Okay. Now, it was a bloody battle. At that time, there was a big fight from both sides. In fact, there were 70,000 soldiers. Commander Ranjit retreated further he had to keep on retreating because the number of the soldiers were a lot. So Ranjit Kumar then used a very interesting tactics, like he knew he cannot win the battle unless he does something. So he knew his handful army was nothing against the 60,000 Chinese army and Tibetan army. Next slide. This is very, very interesting, and everyone will find it interesting. What he did was, now he had a handful of soldiers compared to those 60,000. So at night, he planned a night attack, and historians claim that this plot was not less than any Hannibal story. It was a very interesting movie. Hannibal is a movie. And so what he did was, he gathered several hundred long-horned cattle at that time, at that area, yaks or anything with long horn, and he tied what you call torches to those horns. And then in one direction, he kept all those long-horned cattle in one direction at night, and he burned the torches. And on the other side, along the jungle way, he hung some lanterns. Everywhere lanterns were hung. Now, what does that mean? And on one side, lanterns were swinging due to the wind, and another side, lot of at night. And so the animals were running with burning torches. And from the center, I think from the rear side, he started marching with his army. So when the Chinese at night saw lights of marching cattle, it seemed people were marching from the left, and from the right side they could not go because the lights were swaying as the wind blew. So they thought there were other soldiers there. So, and from one side, Ranjit Kumar marched with his army. The enemies thought they were surrounded. Actually, they were just one bit of army. So he marched from the front and he chased the enemy. Next slide, please. So this was a very interesting tactics he took. And the Nepalese commander also had with them tantric. At that time, believe it or not, there used to be a lot of tantric who used to do 2-3 tantrics would accompany them during the war, doing all mantra to put down the enemy. And one of our historians, Jagman Gurung sir, who has done research on this, a thorough research. So he was telling us that he is also a tantric, modern day tantric, a real tantric and a very well-versed historian. So he was telling us, he was our teacher also. So he was telling us that in that war, imagine 60,000 soldiers. Do you think not only with that tactics, they would not have overcome the army? They could not have won over them if the tantric were not there. And it is very strange. He told us, like, while chasing the army people during the day also they were chasing, and in between there is Trisuli Nadi, as I told you, river, and the bridge is there. And while crossing the bridge, and while the Chinese soldiers were running here, there, they actually started jumping like popcorns out of the popcorn pot into the riverside. So they seem to be like disturbed by something which we don't know what. So he was saying that was all tantric kind of thing going on. So they chanted the mantra, and believe it or not, now people may not believe, but in Nepal, whenever the war took place in the 17th century, there used to be a lot of tantric and tantrism going on to bring down the war. Even today, I don't know, in Nepal, in India, we do lot of yagya at home to bring peace and prosperity to the house so that no one fall ill or something like that. And in that, they do chanting of mantras. So at that time, the mantras were very powerful. So now in this context, the enemies, on seeing moving lights to the left and swing lights to the right, marching armies from the rear, they ran away. And the camp was plundered by the Nepalese. And imagine 60,000 army being overtaken by a handful of army of, say, 4,000, not more than that, 3,000, 2,000, God knows. And then that war was termed as Jeetpur Phedi victory. And it was, at that time, they were very much happy, because imagine overcoming Chinese army, Tibetan army by tactics and by tantric guru. That is what they say. And then the Treaty of Betravati was signed in 1792. Next slide. So the summary of this is, in Treaty of Kerong was a success. Tibet again breached the treaty by paying only one installment. This was the cause of the second war with Tibet and China, because China came with their army, but they lost. So Nepal fought with Tibet and China, who intervened at the request of Tibet. To this day, the people of Nepal continue to say that Tibet came under Red Army because Bhot or Tibet always took help and advice related to minor issues with China. The result is that now they come under China. This is a saying passed down from our great-grandmothers and grandfathers' time, is what they say. And they say this was to happen one day. So it happened. The war at Betravati, 5th October 1792, there was great loss on both China, Tibet, and Nepal. Next slide. So the Treaty of Betravati, it is called Treaty of Betravati. I told you earlier, Betravati was a place where it is, and how it's near the border, Nepal-Tibet border. So Nepal-Tibet must abandon enmity and maintain. Again, the treaty was in name of Tibet, but it was always advised by China. So here, Nepal and Tibet must abandon enmity. They should not fight and become friends. Second, Nepal, after every 5 years, must send gift to the Emperor of China. And there's a story of sending of 2 elephants as a gift to Emperor of China, but 1 elephant dies. So that you can see it in the net also, is another story. An issue related to Nepal and Lhasa will be settled by China, Amba, located at Lhasa. So China was to settle the matter. Nepal must recognize the demarcated border by Chinese in Kuti and Kerong. So at that time, imagine, when Tibet was an independent Bhot, yet China was saying China would fix the border. And then Nepal must return looted asset at at Tasi Lampo Gumpa. And so there was a Tasi Lampo Gumpa where they had looted, and they said, whatever you looted, you give it back. So Nepal must not raise issues related to currency problem and must not make claim of Treaty of Kerung. So they should not now, what took place in Treaty of Kerung, they should not ask for any help. Next slide. On that was their view. Now let's see what Nepal has to say. Next slide. Okay. Then after that, I may have failed to put one slide. The treaty was placed and brought to Nepal, and since China was very, very powerful at that time, and it had lot of human resource, and Tibet was under its wing. So Nepal finally, I think, agreed to many of its saying, but it also said that when they send gift, they should be sent returned gift by China and Tibet along. They should send gifts to Nepal also. And the third war that took place was because of that cause only. The third Nepal war was the cause was, at that time, history says that Muslims attacked Chittor and many chieftains fled. This has been written in the diary of Janga Bahadur. So it is not my opinion, nor is it from history book. In majority, this is from diary of Janga Bahadur that they wrote. And I'm just a researcher who did research, and I'm putting it to you. So they expanded their rule to the north of Tibet in 1791. They sought help of China, and Tibet was always asking help of China to remove the Gorkhalis, and the Chinese enforced tribute to Nepal every 5 years. Even China had to give tribute to Nepal after every 5 years, and Nepal did not like this, and they waited for a chance. So what happened was in 1852, at that time, China was going, Qin dynasty was there, Qin or Qin dynasty or whatever. So at that time, they were having great problems because some rebels were rebelling against the Qin dynasty. So China was going through a lot of disturbances around them. The dynasty were facing. So the Emperor King Tin Wang, he sent a letter that was presented to the king amidst 21 gun salute. So what happened was, at that time, again, some breaches were taking place. The treaty were not being followed. So Nepal sent, so here, as they say, the Emperor King Tring sent a letter that was presented to the king of Nepal. At that time, if they sent something, 21 gun salutes had to be given to the emperor. So that letter, when the Nepal government or the ruler of Nepal was to read, it was opened with 21 gun salute at that time. So the victims of the Tibet outrage was merchants or Sartabhawa. They were looted and beaten very badly in Tibet. So so the travelers, these Nepalese travelers or the merchants, they brought horrifying tales and about such matters to the government, saying that we have been abused, we have been beaten. So Nepal government tried to contact Chinese emperor, but there was no reply at all. Chinese did not respond, because Tibet had nothing to do. Everything they used to tell China. So Nepal directly contacted China, but they did not respond. They wanted, they also wanted a south part of Kuti and Kerang that once belonged to them. So Nepal wanted a part of Kuti belongs to Nepal, and a part of Kerang also belongs to Nepal. So they wanted that back. So Janga Bahadur, at that time, Janga Bahadur, now thought, now since Tibet and China are giving us a lot of trouble, now we cannot wait anymore. So I think we should prepare for war. But he was waiting for a chance. Like, he was a very clever administrator, very good in Rana Niti. I don't know what you call it. He knew how to plan tactics. So next slide. So the opportunity finally came to them when bitter civil war took place in China during Qing Dynasty. There was now the China were facing their own small problems surrounding. They were surrounded by problems of uprising of rebels here, there. So in 1850. 1864, engulfed in 17 provinces. China could not come to the help of Tibet. Now, they had to solve their own problems. Their army was utilized to put down the rebels in various places that was taking place. So, taking this opportunity in 1884, Maharaja Janga Bahadur, he decided to do the attack. He started. What was the now? There were many things that predicted. He started planning for the war. At that time, it was winter. So he knew that to attack during winter is useless because the terrain will be new for them, and the snowfall would be tremendous. So he started planning for war ahead. New army corps of 14,000 foot soldiers, 1,200 horses, 80 light-footed 24 6-pounders, so many things, because war has to be planned. So at that time, it was all like fighting with enemies. So large number of mortars and those thick clothes, because Tibet was higher and the dress there, it was colder. So all that had to be thought. So he started planning everything with training the police, garrison, food supply, dress supply, everything, footwear. Everything was planned. Next slide, please. Then from the western and eastern Nepal, in order to now, Kathmandu does not have everything. So from there, he contacted the western region, the eastern part of Nepal, and wanted youths to join the army. 5,000 soldiers, 1,000 were engaged in military factories to prepare. Ammunitions were prepared, knapsack was prepared, guns were cleaned and usable and made in carriages, boxes, tents, so many things. That was the planning he did even before the war broke out. And all were organized, prepared, and made to march against Tibet. He was just waiting for the time when China could not support Tibet. Now, special kind of clothing had to be prepared called bakhu, that are thick, inside all fur and outside where the snow, even if it melts, it will not go. It was like a raincoat type of warm overcoats, fur boot. Docha is a big boot with fur inside. So everything was prepared for the army even before the war broke out. So large quantities of food grains were purchased, large forces were assembled and assembled at Dhankuta near Sikkim frontier and then he divided the army to various centers from where the attack could take place. Olangchungola, all those areas, he started putting army people there. Another force was placed at Jumla to protect the western district. So it was a very well planned and prepared war. waiting for a chance, and then the war, everything was prepared. Next, please. The scenario was that Tibet sent lamas. First, they sent lamas to Nepal, Nepal court for table talks to impress 28,000 Nepalese troops dressed in Tibetan costumes were paraded to show the country's results. Now, at that time, when those lamas came, Nepalese army dressed as a Tibetan army, in a cloth of Tibetan army, and they paraded in front of them, maybe to show that they had a lot of army. In fact, Janga Bahadur was very good in doing that. There is a story, not a story, real, at that time when Britishers were in India, England, some of the British troops had come to Nepal for hunting, and Janga Bahadur entertained them with hunting. And then to show that they had a lot of army, even when they went to Tarai for hunting, what he did was the armies, like say around 400 army were there. So the hunting party from Great Britain were all there, and then he paraded the army in front of them. 200 army were paraded in one dress, and then when they went behind, they changed their dress into another army dress, and the same army came with another dress and paraded in front of them, and then again went behind and again changed into third army dresses and again paraded. And then the British army was saying, how many armies do you bring while hunting? He said, no, we are just showing you that we have this much army. He was very good in doing all these kind of tactics just to show that they were self-sufficient. Actually, they did not have so much of army as the Britishers also. So those are the tactics of the war which he used to do. So ultimately, the lamas did not agree to what Janga Bahadur wanted, and Janga Bahadur did not agree to what the lamas wanted. So you can see the picture of Thapatali Darbar there, where they were talking about. And then finally, since both the scenario was the dispute took place, discussion took place, table talk was not fruitful. Next slide. Next. Yeah. So another regiment. So now the war broke out. So the war broke out and started from Kathmandu. So the teams now, the war was inevitable, like it would take place 100%. So now the troops marched to Olangchung Gola, regiments were divided, and on 3rd April 1855, Nepalese army sighted 4,000 Tibetan army near Chusan. After hours of fighting, Nepali army became became ruthless, and Tibetan fled. They were actually, the Gorkhas were very ruthless people at that time. It has been mentioned that in the diary. The war is something where we all become inhuman. Like either you kill or you get killed. There's no option beyond that. And even we as a religious people will be happy, as I told you, when someone dies because he is the enemy, but actually he's another human being. So we all become inhuman. So here also the Gorkha army were very ruthless, and they fought. So bloody war took place, and then the Tibetans fled. And Bahadur troops marched unopposed and occupied Kerong, and they won over Kerong. And Jagat Samser went to Dax. Jagat Samser, he saw 6,500 Tibetan well-armed soldiers defending the fort at Gunta. Gunta is a very it's a very ravine, what do you call, a steep slope, and the fort is on top. Next slide, please. Gunta, the war of Gunta has been mentioned in Nepali history a lot. So Jagat Samser was responsible, and the Gunta fort was safeguarded by 6,500 Tibetan soldiers. Jagat Samser resolved to give an immediate battle. He said he did not give the enemy a chance to prepare anything, realized their weakness, and whatever it was a difficult battle. Rain fell, snow blizzard took place, and Jagat Samser in his diary, in Janga Bahadur's diary, it's been written that Tibetans were using sorcery or witchcraft to create all those kind of storms everywhere, is what they have written. So anyway, at that time, Nepalese army lost 232 lives, 40 officers, and Tibetan lost half as many. Next slide, please. The War of Gunta is very famous in Nepal, and the Tibet attacked from right. Next morning, the Tibetans attacked from right wing of and he drove them back. So what happened was, the tactics and outcome of this war was, Jagat Samser divided his force into two groups, and he attacked the fortress from both sides. But the enemies were at the cliff. Now, as I told you, the advantage was the cliff. But still, Nepal shot shells at the fort, and enemies ran. Enemies ran for shelter, and they ran. The enemies started running away, and Jagat Samser and his troops chased them from all along hills and streams and caught around 600 of them. Then he took over the Gunta fort and garrison of the fort, and this victory was sent to Janga Bahadur. Then this took over, and then they took over the Junga fort at Gunta. So there was fight for 9 days, and on the 10th day they surrendered, and 11,000 were taken, 1,100 were taken prisoners, and Nepal lost 372, 159 wounded, and Tibet lost 1,721. Next. So since it is a war, what happened was that fort, they seized lot of rock salt, which was valued at that time 3 lakhs. Beside that, bakus and dochas, their dresses were taken, and then it was distributed to the Nepal army, which was because it is a very cold area. And 182 share is worth 3 lakhs. Was dispatched. All these materials that were captured was dispatched to Nepal. And with the fall of Junga, with the fort at Gunta War, when they won, Janga Bahadur with 8,000 army joined at Balaju camp. And so after that, Janga Bahadur went into the battle. Now, now there were other small groups of commandments. One is Badri Narsingh Rara. A new army was raised, 100,000 army standby. 1 lakh army was kept standby for 3 days. Next. Yeah. Further, then the commander Dheer Samser marched his troops to Swapna Gumpa, a town 9 miles from Kuti. Then at that time, there was a lot of rainfall, snowfall. 8,000 soldiers were there. It is said he fell upon them like a whirlwind. Yeah, he was a great fighter. So he fought with them, and Tibetan officers had to fled. So they fled, and many of them were captured as prisoners. And Nepal also lost 221 soldiers. At that time, it must have been a lot of soldiers, 221, and 195 were wounded, but victory followed. Next. So Maharaja Janga Bahadur warfare is well known in Tibet even today. He was a And it's strange to note that Janga Bahadur was not a very hefty person. He was a very small, light person. And in fact, even Hitler was a very short and light person. Napoleon was short and light person. Janga Bahadur was short and light person, but they were very shrewd in their behavior and very they knew good administrative tactics during the battle, and he was very good at riding horses. And it is said that it's written in the diary that Tibetans called him the flying king. And till today, majority of Tibetans still the grandfather's story saying that Janga Bahadur could fly and kill people is what they used to say. So he was termed as Urne Raja. Urne Raja means flying person, the flying king. He was termed like that. So Tibetans, when he went to fight, Tibetans again fled and the fort was captured. 5,000 soldiers were taken, were unable to face the fires of Janga Bahadur. He was a great fighter. And if you remember, Janga Bahadur was helping the Britishers after 1816, majority of Nepal's territory was taken away by Britishers. And in Sepoy Mutiny of India in Lucknow, Janga Bahadur helped the British to put down the Sepoy Mutiny. And it was after that the Great Britain returned to them Kailali, Kanchanpur, Bake, Bardia, all those areas actually were taken away by British, but because Janga helped them, they returned it to Nepal and it was known as Naya Muluk. So that is another part of the war. So he was an old school fighter, like they used to go and fight the enemy themselves. So after this, all this Sona Gumba was very rich. Why is it called Sona? Because it was all gold inside. So they looted that and they won over the war. Next slide. So Janga, Jagat, and Dhir Samser, or Jagat Samser, Dhir Samser, all returned to Kathmandu. Now, Tibetans were tired of war because China was not helping them anymore. So they said, let us go for treaty. So Tibet went to ask help of China, but China advised them, both you should decide for yourself. They had their own problems. So Tibetans again took advice of China, and there were certain Nepalese sent certain kind of conditions to Tibet, but Tibet took that conditions to China, and both said, no, what you are writing is not correct, so we may not agree. So Kazi Tribikram Thapa went to meet the Chinese ambassador. So the Chinese consul received him not nicely. Actually, they were not treated well. Because when an envoy comes to you, an ambassador comes to you, he should be treated well. But here they were not treated well. So what happened was, so the Nepalese were very angry with this. And then in November 1855, news came that Tibetan Tatars forces numbering 1,500 surprised Nepalese. Okay, the place where they had attacked, like near Kuti, Kerong. Now the Tibetans, with the inner force of China, they came and attacked suddenly those places which had been won by Nepal in the earlier war. So now what happened? Again, second attack took place, and then Janga sent Dhir Samser. Now again, Dhir Samser, the great fighter, was sent to safeguard those places. And he sent his brother-in-law Sanak Singh Tandon for reinforcing Junga. Junga fort was again taken over by Tibet by suddenly attacking. Next. Okay, Dhir Samset had to go and regain the Junga fort. So he divided his army into 3 divisions. Kuti right wing under Bhaktajang and 10,000 soldiers, left wing by Colonel Makhandoj, central under his command. Attack was made on all sides, and despite Tibetans fought for 3 hours, and Nepal celebrated victory and loss of 321, 149 wounded. So while General Sanak Singh fought very gallantly and reached Junga, having slaughtered 1,800 Tibetans, but lost 400 soldiers, and Tibetans suffered. Next. Now it's nearing to the end. So in January 1856, treaty was to be signed. And the finally treaty came to there. Both Tibet and Nepal agreed, and then the envoy was sent from Tibet with the advice of China, a peace treaty to sign peace treaty at Thapatali Palace. So here on 24th March 1856, finally treaty was signed at Thapatali Darbar. The picture you see, those are postcards from Kuti and Kerong. At that time, earlier, victory news was sent through Daura. Daura, what do we call Daura? Are those horse riders who would carry the message from one horse rider to another, swift horse riders. So that was it. And here also we found, I found some pictures of Kuti postcard, Kerung postcards. It has been turned into postcard, but in those days it was a letter written and stamped during the war. So the treaty was signed, and the palace, you can see Thapatali Palace. Now it's a portion of it is Nepal Bank, Nepal Rashtra Bank at Thapatali is a small portion that remains to this day of Thapatali Darbar. So it was 10 points treaty. Tibet must commit to pay annually 10,000, and Nepal would help Tibet in case of foreign invasion. Lhasa government will not levy taxes to Nepali merchants. Once the treaty is signed, Nepal must return Kerong and Junga fort that had been captured by them, and also the captured soldiers had to be returned, and also the sheep. So even the sheep had been taken as hostages, I suppose. They had to be returned. So now return from Nip, and then henceforth there should be Dut or ambassador instead of representatives of Nepal. So they also agreed on Dut or representative. They should be from Nepal and Tibet, and if any problem arises, they should go to them. Next slide. Finally, in the Gorkha should open shops. Gorkha should, the treaty also stressed on the merchants, or the Gorkhas could open shops at Lhasa and trade gems, jewelry, foodstuff. Nepal officers will given rights to settle the cases, and Gorkhalis and Kashmiri residing in Tibet, but like if they have any problem, they would go to the concerned person and then solve the problem. And in case of Tibetan people having problem, they would go to their representative. Both Nepal will stay away from internal affairs of Tibet. Both Nepal and Tibet will surrender convicts to the representatives of their country. Government of Tibet must ensure security to life and property of Nepali merchants residing in Lhasa. If plundered, then government must make arrangement for its return. Both government must help each other to protect life and property of citizens and help them during the war. Thus, treaty was signed. Next. Okay. In conclusion, it can be said that the war of 17th and 18th century between Nepal and Tibet was due to many causes: territorial ambition, economic interest, religious and cultural factors. Dynamics often fueled war, like maybe they did not agree to their religious things or cultural things that did not match. That's why Tibet was always running to China, because their culture and their cultural relations was much closer to them. Then political alliance and influence, example, Chinese involvement, the Qing dynasty influence over Tibet, the weakness of Tibet government, the political disunity and instability of Tibet, border disputes, all these kinds of things must have led to the cause of 17th century and 18th century war. So finally, we conclude that after all, after going through all three wars, it seems like in all cases, like whether they are winners, whether they are losers, in both places, both countries suffered. Thank you.
Of course. Thank you very much.
My God, such a long presentation, my God. Piyush sir, thank you for such a time.
Yes, it was very interesting, really very interesting. You were telling in such a way that, for example, as for me, I was totally involved in that war situation, what was happening. So really, it was very interesting. So now the floor is open for your questions. Please,
Yeah,
who has a question?
Working. Thank you. First of all, it was a wonderful, very, very interesting presentation, Dr. Poonam.
yes.
See, I have not studied the Nepali history in full, but my knowledge of Nepali history is limited. And recently, I got more interested after reading one book. This book is from All Road Leads to
Yes,
North
yes.
by Amish Raja Mulme. And very interesting things he has brought in here. So in your talk, I feel that the Nepal and Bhutan relationship has to be defined. And I feel, and you can correct me, I want clarification, that it was the relationship was basically trade relationship, because Tibet was a landlocked country, and everything that they needed apart from food used to come through Nepal.
Mhm.
And there were two passes, Kurung and Kuti. They were the main trade routes, which was under Nepali control. The road was between Nepal and Tibet was extremely difficult. Used to take very long time, very difficult terrain, and very dangerous. Therefore, correct me if I am wrong. Nepal never entertained territorial ambition towards Tibet, because it was very, very difficult to reach there. Even the army used to take few months to reach there.
Yes.
And to control. So they were not interested in territorial control, but they were very much interested in trade. Another fact that I came to know is this trade was Nepal and Bhutan trade was controlled by a community called Nevars. It is very interesting. Mulvi has gave very interesting thing. They were one community who was controlling the entire Nepal and Tibet trade, and they were Nepalis. They used to have a family in Nepal, but they used to go and stay in Tibet for many years and create a family there also.
Yeah.
They had one family in Tibet, Tibetans. They used to put on Tibetan clothes, Tibetan tradition, everything. They liked Tibetan, but they were Nepalis. And after 4 or 5 years, they used to come back to Nepal and join. And that family was given the secondary position. So in this war, the role of Nevas are very important, because all the war started when the Tibetans used to attack these Nevari community. They were the trader community, and they used to loot them. To protect these people, all the three wars, Nepali government has sent their army and to protect them and to extract compensation for the losses that were caused by the looters of Tibet. And another interesting thing I come to know is that appointment of Amban. Now, between the dispute between Nepal and Tibet, Tibet always used to take help of China, and as a result, China appointed one ambassador there. And whenever there was a dispute, they used to arbitrate, and by that they created the claim not only on Tibet, but in some negotiation, Nepal representative went to China for arbitration. And then China claimed that Nepal was sending tributes to China, and therefore China has suzerainty over Nepal as well as Tibet. So they at one point of time there. These are the facts that has come to my mind. And if my understanding is wrong, you can correct me.
No, it's correct, because the Sarthaba were Nevars. Majority were Nevars, and they were supposed to be very rich because they traded gold. And there are many stories attached to Nevars. And when they came back to Kathmandu, they could not go to their house at once. They had to observe 15 days, like in COVID, when there was a separate house made for them, where all the traders, when they came back for 10-15 days, they would stay in that isolated house for 10 days or 15 days, do some purification on themselves, and then only after that they would go to their homes. So this is another interesting factor. It's right. There were Ranjitkar, Tandukar, and even now when I was there in 2018, there are families who are there since 6th century. The people who had gone to with Princess Prikuti in the 6th century as dowry, they stayed there and they became Tibetans later on. Their children were born there, and now even if they are Nepali, the Tibetans and the Chinese, now the Chinese give them identity card as Khachara. Khachara, I don't know why they call them Khachara, because I did not like that name. We used to say Khachad to cross between donkey and the horse. Khachad. So, and then when my guide, when my guide told me those Nepalese who are married Tibetans, their children are called Khachada, then I said, what do you mean? It's not a nice thing to say, but everyone agrees that China gives them an identity. They are termed as Khachada. I said, first when he said Khachada, I thought it was yak and horse, like combination of yak and horse child. But then it was not. It was Nepal and Tibetans when they marry, and their children were termed as Khachada. Even now, the identity card is what they get is khachara. I said that's not a nice way to term, but they said no, everyone agrees, so you don't have to worry because they are really khacharas. That's what he said. So even today, the trading continues. Yeah, even today the trade is still there, and these people were the ones like in Nepal we have the CG, the many other business people, Khetan, all these kind of controlling. At that time, the Newar business people were actually Sartabahas, or the traders were the ones controlling or giving donations to the government, paying taxes. So all these kind of things were very interesting to note. Yes, sir, you are right.
And Nepali coins were actually sovereign coins, where the exchange, trade exchange, foreign exchange in Tibet, all this while, not Tibetan coin. So it is the Nepali coin that was used in Tibet.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So now the question from Mr. Atreya.
Thank you. But President, sir, do you want to say something?
Okay.
The President has put on his TV and put on his camera, and we're muted, sir. Do you want to say something?
Rishi, you can ask your question. I will come in the end.
Ma'am, two things. One is, you say that Tibetans, so were they ruled by Dalai Lama, or who was the sovereign of Tibet is the first question. Secondly, you say, and secondly, they kept going to China for everything, running to China with their problems. So in a sense, even before Dalai Lama's escape, was China sort of exercising some kind of suzerainty over Tibet?
Okay.
Where does Dalai Lama fit into the picture?
Okay. Dalai Lama came later, but earlier, at that time in Tibet, there were Tibetan kings, rulers, but they had hardly any power. I don't know. They were ruling people. The religious groups were also there. Dalai Lama, the lamas were very powerful. It's exactly like bishops of England controlling the court, or the pandits and gurus controlling the kings, advising them to do this, that. It was exactly like that, because lamas played an important role. Though there were powerful kings, Tibet had a king. They were a free, independent country, yet everything for small issues, they used to run for advice with China. China had emperor. Emperor was greater than the king. That was the concept in those days. So the lamas had control over the king, because imagine, for any treaty, lamas were sent to Nepal for discussion, table talks. And it was with the advice of the Tibetan king, and also with the advice of the emperor. So what it is, the context you see is, Tibet was since long time, in the 6th century, when our princess married Srongcham Gompo. At that time, they were very powerful. So Srongcham Gompo also married Chinese Princess Wenchen. Princess Wenchen was another, his two wives were, one Trikuti, another Princess Wenchen was White Tara, and she was termed as the Green Tara. And but both of them were childless, but the Tibetan wife did have a child. So all this, at that time, they were very powerful. As time passes on, their power, maybe their influence, they were very much under the influence of the Chinese government, though they never came under the Chinese at that time. And no wonder Nepal, the traders, the Sartabahas, and maybe when Sir finishes his book, he will find that everywhere, somewhere, these traders were writing like, Tibet is always going to China, complaining like a mouse running towards their hole, that is China. That is why one day, when China took over, Red Army took over Tibet, Nepal was Nepalese people did not wonder that one day it would happen, because it happened long ago. Like everything was with the advice of China. So there was a king. At that time, Dalai Lama, the Lamas, there was Dalai Lama came, incarnations, ideology came with the Gelug community coming. There is Sakyapa, Gelugpa, Ningmapa, all these kind of groups when they emerged, and later on, that came later. Dalai Lama concept, the Avatari Lama or the reincarnated Lama concept came later. But before that, there were kings in Tibet. Anyone? Any more questions?
Yes, and Mr. Sandeep, you have a question?
No, I have no question. In fact, I just wanted to inform that there has been a ceasefire between Pakistan and India.
Oh, thank God. Great.
So
That has been announced from 5 o'clock onwards. Since Pakistan requested for a ceasefire, and it was agreed to at the terms of India.
And Mr. Trump has taken the credit.
No, Mr. Trump has nothing to do with it. He's only just put to this thing. It has come out very clear that Trump had no major role in it.
No, he is somewhere else.
Only thing that thinking that if you want 1 billion rupees, might as well do this. That may be one of the that's my analysis.
Okay. So, any other questions? No, nobody has questions after such a good news, right?
Yeah, that is, and I was from my heart and soul, I was praying for.
One thing, one clarification more, Dr. Rana. I believe during these 3 wars, once China had sent its army in support of and that army got stuck in a valley, and the Gorkhas are almost defeated the royal army. They could not. They had to.
Yes.
Was it during these 3 wars?
Yeah.
That was a significant event.
Earlier also, China was advising, but soldiers, they did not send so much of troops. But in the second war, where the Treaty of Betravati took place, at that instant, they had sent 60,000 army. That's what is. Maybe it's exaggerated, but the diary writes that. So it was, and the tactics was used, and many things were used, and tantrism was used. So it was a horrible war. One part won, another part lost, and lot of, in both cases, there was lot of.
But the Royal Army of China did not finally defeat the Gorkha army. This is what it is told. And they got knocked down.
Yes, but because they were emperor, and our government had king, they were not emperor. So the king had to have respect for emperor in those days. So their conditions, when they did not accept, so both of them came together, and on the advice of China, finally Betravati Treaty was signed.
Thank you.
Well, despite winning, Nepal had to give certain part of Kerong, Kuti back to Tibet.
Thank you. Poonamji, I have my question. So you said that in the end of 1856 war, Tapatali Treaty was signed, and in one item it was written that Nepal will help Tibet in case of foreign invasion. So this thing happened, Nepal helped Tibet in when there was foreign invasion.
If any foreign invasion took place, Nepal was supposed to help Tibet.
Yes.
Uh,
But is there any example of that or no? It didn't happen.
how could it, when China invaded Tibet, if they had kept this treaty in mind, Nepal should have been helping Tibet. But Nepal at that time, thousands of Nepali, but one thing they did was they gave asylum to Tibetans. They came via Kuti, they came from Kerong side, and a lot of Tibetans, when Red Army attacked, fled to Nepal, and they were given asylum around Bauddhanath area. Even today, you can see many of them residing there. Yeah.
Okay. Yes. Thank you. So, any other questions?
Ma'am, when you talk about China having emperor and Nepal having a king,
Yeah.
in a sense, Nepal, although it never officially came under the British, had some kind of a relationship with Britain. They had a resident posted in the Nepal court, and before 1923, they were not fully independent of Britain. So, what was the role of the British Empire, the Viceroy or Governor General?
Yeah, now it was in those days, there was concept of the emperor. There was hierarchy even among monarchies. Even you all know Janapada, Mahajanapada has been mentioned in the history. And we talk about the Mahajanapadas, the monarchies, the republicans getting together, forming groups to fight against common enemy like that. So China at that time had a lot of human resource. It was very rich in human resource. And the king, they used to call the Chinese king emperor of Tang dynasty, emperor of Qing dynasty. Yeah. And so all these kind of things, they used to, they regarded though Nepal did not bother about China, nor did they bother about Tibet, but because trade relations and the money import and export was going on, so they did care about it. And as for your saying with the Britishers, Nepal was Jangabadur, was much more closer to the after 1860 Treaty of Sugauli. Anglo-Nepal War was fought. I think someone will be talking on it later. And in that Anglo-Nepal War, Nepal lost a lot of it lost Sikkim, and if you look into that, Kangra and all that was Nepal's. Dehradun was lost. So many Garhwal area. Even now, Sikkim people you can know are speaking Nepali. So many places were completely lost to the British. And then Nepal finally in 1816 Treaty of Sugauli, where it lost many of its territories. Then after that, your Sepoy mutiny took place. During Jangabadur's time, Sepoy mutiny took place, and he helped the British in Lucknow. He attacked, he himself went there, fought with the British soldiers. He helped the Britishers to put down Sepoy mutiny. And after that, the taken away part, New Nepal, it is called Naya Muluk. Naya Muluk is Bake, Bardia, Kailali, Kanchanpur. Those 4 areas, it's quite a large area, was as a return, because he helped them, they returned that, the Britishers returned that. But other parts they did not. So it was a mutual kind of, actually Britishers had come to attack, but they could not last long, because the area where they had to cross is malaria infected area. And it was anyone who came would catch malaria, be ill, and they could not last long, so they had to return. So and in the northern side, there was the Himalayas. So we talk about we being brave, but actually the natural resources and the natural formation is the one which made us safe from the outsiders. So bravery is we used to think we are so brave, but now after I become rational, after I start thinking, I feel like we were safeguarded by the natural formation of the country and the disease infected areas which did not allow foreigners, and we had no harbor. So the sea route was there was no sea routes. That's why we were safe. So that's that.
Okay, thank you, Poonamji. So if there are no questions, then I will give my final comments.
Yes.
Really, when you were telling all these things, it was like we went to those ages and felt this all things, how it was happening, because you also showed so many pictures, those days pictures, how these Maharajas, the Rajas were dressed and soldiers. So we could feel that. And also when you were mentioning the names of the cities in Tibet, in the settlements like Shigatse, Nyalam, Kuti, Gerung, Lhasa. So I was remembering my trip to Tibet, that I passed through all these places, and really it was interesting. But the main thing is there are many, not many, but a few records by Armenian merchants who traveled from India to Nepal and Tibet. And the things that you are telling, that why the first war began, it was because of the low quality salt and the low level coins. And and the same thing are telling the records of Armenian merchants of 17th, 18th century. Yes, they are telling that, for example, they were paying ingots of silver or gold in the customs on the border of Nepal and Tibet, or on the border of India and Nepal. So they were saying that all the time we are cheated because the the quality of the silver was very low. That's why this was the complaint of these merchants. And also they were telling about that, you are saying that it was so cold, it was very difficult to travel from Nepal to Tibet and from Tibet to China, all these routes. In these Armenian manuscripts, it is also, everything is told that such difficult roads, and they had to stay for a long time, for weeks and months, to wait for the good weather. And also they were waiting for Maharaja of Nepal to come and stamp their this what you call their big things, to allow them to leave the border. So really your talk so reminded me all these memoirs by our merchants who traveled there. And there was, by the way, in a very big Armenian community in Lhasa, in Tibet. And from there, they were traveling to China. So now, what else? So thank you. Your talk has enriched our understanding of the Nepal Bhot wars, highlighting not only the military aspects, but also their cultural and political implications. It's a reminder of how deeply interconnected Himalayan history is, and how these events continue to shape regional relations even today. So, Dr. Rana, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I hope it was interesting, because battles and good news. Thank you so much for the good news of ceasefire. That's the more than my presentation. I'm so happy for the ceasefire. Take care. Thank you, Piyush.
Thank you. Thank you.
sir.
On behalf, yes, on behalf of Indus International Research Foundation, I express my thanks to Dr. Poonam Rajalakshmi Rana for such a wonderful research presentation. My sincere thanks to our session chair, Dr. Naira Markachin. Thanks to all IIRF members, our president, sir, our general secretary, Rishi Atre, sir, and other scholars and participants who have joined the webinar and made it successful. And more success comes from the words of our president, sir, that a ceasefire has been announced. And it's really a good thing. But we will, in our next webinar, we will be doing analysis on the ceasefire also and what India has
Good. Yeah, we'll see that.
another thing to come. So thank you once again. And I'm stopping the recording.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Meda sir. Bye, Naira. Thank you, everyone.